Welcome to Seattle Buddhist Temple's first virtual Bon Odori. The foundation of our temple is based on the teaching of Shinran Shonin, who lived 800 years ago in Japan and lived to be 90 years old. I would like to give you a brief history of his life with the help of depictions of him by the Honganji Bonbu Media and our headquarters in Kyoto, Japan. The most remarkable parts of his life were his encountering of his teacher Honen and their exile, his marriage to Eshini, and his spreading of the Nembutsu teaching. Nembutsu teaching means relying on Amida Buddha and the great compassion of the 18th vow to save everyone. Nembutsu is voiced as Namo Amida Butsu. Shinran was born into a lower-level aristocratic family. He endured the Kamakura period when warrior clans were fighting against the government of the nobility and when terrible floods, earthquake, and famine were happening. But for Shinran, what was probably the most devastating in his early years was the loss of his mother at the age of 8 years. After the passing of his mother, he asked to be brought to a temple. So, at the age of 9, Shinran became a monk at Shorin-in, a Tendai Buddhist temple. Not long after being ordained, he ascended Mount Hiei. He studied there at the Tendai temple for 20 years in monastic life, performed practices such as continuous recitation of the Nembutsu, arduous physical challenges, chanting, and studying sutras. Mount Hiei had been the highest institute of Buddhist learning in Japan, but when Shinran arrived, it had degenerated into displays of ambition, jealousy, and political infighting. After 20 years on Mount Hiei, Shinran became discouraged. He was not able to attain the emancipation he was looking for. He began to feel that he could not follow the path of sages. He was gradually drawn to the Pure Land teaching that was being taught by Genshin. So at the age of 29, he descended Mount Hiei and retreated to Rokkakudo. At Rokkakudo, he set out for 100 days to find answers from Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, or Kannon Bodhisattva, teacher of the Dharma of Amida Buddha. Then on the 95th day, Kannon told him to entrust in the working of the Buddha and to visit a person who was spreading the Nembutsu teaching of Amida Buddha. That person would be Honen. He spent the next 100 days listening to the Dharma at Yoshimizu after meeting his good teacher, Honen. What Honen was teaching was the 18th primal vow of Amida Buddha, which says, "If those who recite the Nembutsu, believing that they would be saved and be born in the Pure Land, cannot attain birth in the Pure Land, I will not attain enlightenment." Honen Shonin emphasized the awareness of Amida Buddha's primal vow. Shinran accepted Amida Buddha's primal vow and was no longer discouraged by anything. He studied for 4 years with Honen. Honen eventually entrusted Shinran with his teaching and allowed him to copy his writings. At this time, however, monks on Mount Hiei and in Nara were offended and angry by the popularity of Honen's Nembutsu teaching, and in 1207 the government banned his Nembutsu teaching. Several followers were executed. Honen and others, including Shinran, were banished from the capital. Shinran and Honen were stripped of their priesthoods, given laymen's names, and exiled. Shinran to the north and Honen to the south. Shinran and Honen never met again in person. During his exile, Shinran married Eshini. Shinran married with Honen's consent, suggesting that the compassion of Amida Buddha is so great and universal as to come to everybody, whatever life he may lead, married or celibate. As Shinni and Shinran began raising a family, it would be more than appropriate to call Shinni the mother of Jodo Shinshu. Shinran was pardoned after 5 years, but he did not return to Kyoto. Instead, in 1214, when Shinran was 42, the family made their way into what is now the Tokyo area. There he spread the Nembutsu teaching for 20 years, building a large movement among the peasants and lower samurai. He shared his understanding in a very personalized way, taking into consideration the background of his listeners and relating his talks to their problems, rather than preaching in a general way to large crowds. He guided those who had difficulty in making a living become aware of their great suffering and confront it. Then they could be led to the awareness of the great compassion that had always been present. When earthquake and floods devastated the land, Shinran was devastated by the suffering he saw. He tried to alleviate the suffering by chanting the 3 Pure Land Sutras 1,000 times as he was taught on Mount Hiei. But he realized that was a mistake. So he stopped his repetitive chanting of the sutras and relied on the Nembutsu Namo Amida Butsu alone. Shinran at 63 began a new life with his return to Kyoto. He devoted his final 30 years to writing. He wrote about the sacred teaching so that it could be transmitted to future generations. He did not give sermons or teach disciples. He lived with relatives, supported by gifts from his followers. As Shinni returned to Echigo to care for her family matters, Shinran was tended by his youngest daughter, Kakushinni. It was during this period that he did most of his writing. He completed his major work, popularly known as Kyogyo Shinsho, the true teaching, practice, and realization of the Pure Land Way, and he composed hundreds of hymns in ordinary language for ordinary people. He also wrote numerous letters and commentaries, resolving problems and misunderstandings that arose in the Kanto area. Shinran quietly passed away while reciting the Nembutsu on January 16, 1262. Shinran transformed the misfortune of exile into an opportunity to spread the teaching of Amida Buddha's primal vow. He said, "If I had not been exiled, how would I have been able to help the people of that remote area? All this is due to the blessing of my beloved Master Honen." And much of what we can confirm about Shinran Shonin's life is due to the letters written by his wife, Shinni, to their youngest daughter, Kakushinni. Those letters were discovered in 1921, 650 years after his time. Kakushinni kept Shinran Shonin's memory and teaching alive by building a temple enshrining his image. This mausoleum became an official temple and was named the Honganji, which serves as a center from which Shinran's teaching are spread for many generations to this day. I hope you have enjoyed this brief history of our founder, Shinran Shonin. Please enjoy Bon Odori, keep the memory of Shinran Shonin and your loved ones alive, and dance joyfully in thanksgiving for all of our lives today. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu.